Hey, welcome back, and it's Mr. Shrum. We are looking at the second section on the nervous system. And the first lesson is nerve impulse. So what's an impulse? If you've heard that phrase before, we're going to find out what that means exactly. A nerve impulse is a wave of electrical current that spreads along dendrites and axons within a nerve. Nerve impulses are a result of ions moving through channels in the plasma membrane of a neuron. An ion is an inorganic substance located in biological fluids with an electric charge. And the electric charge may be either negative or positive. So look at this picture here. We have these positive ions here, the red ones, and we have negative ions, which are blue in this example here. Examples of ions and their charge include chloride. They have a negative charge. Proteins have a negative charge. Sodium and potassium both have positive charges. All right, so have you ever experimented with a magnet? There is a positive side and a negative side of a magnet. And if you put a positive with a negative, they will stick together. If you put a negative side by another negative side of a magnet, they will repel each other. And the same happens with the positive. So positive and negative ends of magnets go together, negative, negative, and positive, positive repel each other. And this electrical force exists in the human body as well. So think about magnetism and positive and negative charges. Within the body, it's called an electrical potential or just potential. Potential is the force that draws positive and negative ions together. Think of opposites attract, likes repel. This is called electrical potential. A current is when ions move because of attraction or repulsion. So anytime these ions are moving, that is a current. Lipids, like those in the plasma membrane, are good insulators. Insulators help prevent the movement of charged ions. If you think about conductors and insulators, conductors help move electricity and heat. Insulators slow down the movement of electricity and heat. Negative ions, such as proteins within the nerve cells, are too large to move through the plasma membrane, so they remain immobile. They don't move. The positive ions, sodium and potassium, travel through sodium-potassium pumps and voltage-gated channels. Voltage-gated channels open and close depending on the electrical charge around them. Oh, sorry about that. When the neuron is not being stimulated, it is referred to as being at rest. And while at rest, the neuron has a positive charge outside the plasma membrane, a negative charge inside. Positive outside, negative charge inside the plasma membrane. Now, this is a resting potential, and that's due to sodium-potassium pumps. And they are continually moving sodium ions out of the cell and potassium ions into the cell. More sodium ions move out than potassium ions move in, therefore resulting in a net negative charge inside the cell. So what you're saying is more positive ions are moving out, making the outside more positive than the inside. Therefore, that results in a net negative charge inside the cell. Negatively charged proteins remain inside the cell, and that also results in the net negative charge inside the cell. So think of in the cell as being negative. So in and N negative. Okay. When a neuron is stimulated, there is a rapid change in polarity that moves along the nerve fiber, which is called the action potential. There are three stages to an action potential: depolarization, repolarization, and refractory phase. When the neuron is stimulated, it causes sodium gates to open. And this opening of sodium gates results in positively charged sodium ions flowing into the nerve cell. So positive ions are entering the nerve cell. That lessens the charge difference between the outside of the cell and the inside of the cell. Soon, sodium is accumulated inside the cell. And the effect of that is depolarization, which is when the polarity switches. So now the outside of the cell has a net negative charge, and the inside of the cell has a net positive charge. So when a neuron is stimulated, positive sodium ions are entering the cell, meaning the outside is now negative, and the inside of the cell is now net positive. And that depolarization causes more voltage gated sodium gates to open, which continues to spread down the membrane. Repolarization is the next step, and that is restoring the cell to its original resting potential. So we have a resting potential, something happens, a neuron gets stimulated, it's depolarized by sodium ions entering the neuron, and then repolarization is getting back to normal. And repolarization is generated by the voltage-gated potassium gates to open and the sodium gates to close. Positively charged potassium is repelled out of the cell by the presence of the positively charged sodium ions. Because likes repel, sodium can no longer flow into the cell because the sodium gates are closed. Repolarization is complete when the outside of the cell has a net positive charge and the inside of the cell has a net negative charge. And then there's the refractory phase. That is a short period of time when the sodium potassium pump returns sodium ions to the outside of the cell and potassium ions to the inside. During this phase, the cell membrane cannot be depolarized again. This explains why action potentials can only move forward from the point of stimulation. In non-myelinated fibers, this nerve impulse travels down the length of the fiber. You can see that here. Myelinated fibers are able to conduct the nerve impulse hundreds of times faster because the action potential only occurs at the nodes of Ranvier by jumping from node to node. If you look at the myelin sheath, you notice that each it's broken up into sections, and between those sections is a node of Ranvier. So in conclusion, a nerve impulse is a wave of electrical current that spreads along dendrites and axons. When a neuron is stimulated, there is a rapid change in polarity that moves along the nerve fiber, which is called the action potential. And there are three stages to an action potential: depolarization, that is when sodium ions are entering the cell, and repolarization, that is when it's trying to get back to normal by sending potassium ions into the cell and closing the sodium gates. And then refractory phase is when potassium ions are returned to the inside of the cell and sodium ions are returned to the outside of the neuron cell. And that's it for nerve impulse. So if you have any questions about that, be sure to message me and study this picture very well. I can't get a very good, let's see how clear it is when a little fuzzy. But this shows you the resting potential, depolarization, repolarization, and then back to resting potential. So we have potassium inside the cell resting and sodium ions outside of the cell resting. And you see that inside the cell we have negative, outside we have positive charge. Then the action potential starts. Depolarization, we have sodiums entering through those sodium gates. And that means the outside now has a net negative because positive ions are leaving the outside, coming into the inside, and now the inside has a positive net charge. Then we have repolarization, where potassium ions are leaving the cell to the outside to make the net charge inside negative again. And then refractory phase is when potassium ions return and sodium ions return to the outside or leave. Okay. So remember this picture here. And I could probably find a better picture, maybe. That doesn't look right. Yeah, here we go. Maybe I'll try to upload a better video to Canvas as well. But until next time, see you guys and best of luck. Bye bye.